be able to see that video. Oh, here we go.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my show, my bucket list, girl. Who don't you know? It's the talk show with me, Marilyn Green. So glad that you can join me today. And you know, when you come to my show, I am transforming minds one show at a time. So if you could be so kind now as to share my show. Someone needs to hear about school discipline today because I have a very special guest on. So please take the time to share the show so that everybody who needs to be on is on. And so I'm going to give you a little minute to do that. And in the meantime, please go to Girl Who Don't You Know on Facebook, and you can post your comments during the live show. I love to hear from you. And on that note, today, since we're talking about school discipline, please put in there where you're from. And then tell me, who is your favorite teacher? I know who my favorite teacher is. Is my third grade teacher, Miss Garrett. So put your favorite teacher in there and tell me where you're from. That would be helpful for today. All right. I hope you're sharing. Okay. And also, I want to say hi to all my YouTube people out there, I think. And you can be on YouTube as well at capital M. That's capital M. If you put a little M, it's not going to bring me up. So it's Maryland _ pink, the letter N and green. Please go there and subscribe. Please do. So please continue to share and share. Also, I'm going to have to put a little plug out there for myself. My new book, Stuck Is Not Your Story, is on for pre-sale today. And if you can be the first 30 people, we will have a special tribute to you and put your name in the book, okay? Write me at a heart that is brave at gmail.com, or you can DM me. I would love for you to purchase the book, Stuck Is Not Your Story. It's a compilation of about 11 other authors who are telling how stuck was not their stories and how they're triumphant now. So it's a good book so that you can make sure that you have that hope and the inspiration that you need as you move further. All right. And also, hey, let us advertise for you. You can contact me at girlwdyk at gmail.com, or you can DM IM. You can contact me. And remember, please put that hashtag GWDYK everywhere, because I really do need everybody to start coming to my show. So excited about that. All righty. Let's see here. Let's hide this. We'll go back to this. All right. Girl Who Don't You Know, again, it's Marilyn Green, who's your talk show host. And so if you're just joining, we got a very exciting guest today, a very special guest for me today. So all righty, let's see. Kiara, do we have any comments that need? Oh, Miss Mary Stapleton Carr, good evening from MISSISSIPPI. Now you tell me, who was your favorite teacher? And Annabelle, thank you for joining in. Good evening to you. From Freeport, Mr. Roosevelt Banks, my sixth grade teacher. Shout out to you, Mr. Roosevelt Banks. Who else? I know you all got some favorite teachers. Sign me up for the book, please and thanks. Thanks so much, Soror, Kat, Rupert. Thank you for joining me today. Any more? Kiara, do we have anybody else out there want to tell me exactly who was their favorite teacher? All righty then. So let's get started here then. All right, so I have waiting in what I call my green room, and I decided that I'm going to introduce him. I have Dr. Johnny Williams III. He is an assistant professor of multicultural education at Texas A&M University at College Station. His research focuses on developing and replicating best practices, policies, and personnel to dismantle inequitable discipline outcomes for Black students in K through 12 school environments. Dr. Williams has spent time working with teachers, school district administration, juvenile justice practitioners, and community members across the country to de-silo how we support Black children as critically conscious learners. Dr. Williams has multiple publications in peer-reviewed journals such as the Journal of Negro Education, the Journal of Social Work, Teacher and Teacher Education, Urban Education Research, and Pub and Policy Annuals, in the Journal of Urban Education. So, without further ado, please welcome me, and you guys can put your little hand claps up there as I bring Dr. Williams to the stage. Hi, Dr. Williams. How are you?
Good evening, everybody. Good morning, depending on where you are in the world, and hope everybody's doing well.
All right, then. Okay, so I'm trying to move this off. Okay, you know I'm a baby boomer. Hear me roar. Okay, so hi, Sora Carrie McDaniels. How are you? My favorite teacher was Mrs. Washington. Okay, shout out to Mrs. Washington. And so thank you so much. Kat Rupert said her favorite is one of our Soros, I think, Lola Key. Kat Marlene Locke. Man, you got a bunch of them. Everybody shaped you, huh? My fifth grade teacher is Miss Kelly. All right, so teachers, educators. Kat said Dr. Leanna Hill. All right, all right. Ronald Wood, she got the whole lineup. Everybody touch you. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing because Mary Stapleton says, good evening, Dr. Williams, Dr. Williams. And Reggie, don't try to fool me with this stuff. Reggie, you know who I'm talking about. Dr. Jill. Do you know who that is?
Yes,
Dr.
I do. He's an educator, a phenomenal educator, in the St. Louis metro area. I know who he is.
Okay. All right. Annabelle says, welcome, Dr. Williams. Okay, let's get started. Dr. Williams, how are you, sir?
Doing well tonight.
Doing well tonight. We are so happy that you have graced us with your appearance today to talk about a subject that really affects everybody. We talk about tribes, we talk about villages. Education is everybody's issue. Okay. So tell me a little bit about you. Where you're from? Okay. What made you get into discipline? Were you disciplined a lot? Oh, okay, go for it.
All right, so I'm from a mighty town named East St. Louis, Illinois. If individuals don't know where that city is, please look it up. Spent all of my K-12 experience in private schools, and there's a story behind that, but that'll take too long to get to it. But a private school education up until, I would say, college. So I went to the greatest college in the galaxy is the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. You have to say Urbana-Champaign because if you say Champaign-Urbana, the Urbana folks get kind of mad. But that formed my K-12 and my post-secondary education. From there, went on to get a couple of masters. And then I went to get my third master's in education policy studies. And it was during that time that I started to do more research on this idea of school discipline, particularly for students in special education. So that was my first push because my first job out of college was working with students with special needs. And I would say that the individuals that nobody wanted to work with, I enjoyed working with. So that kind of propelled me through. Did a couple of jobs, all working with youth who'd been kicked out of school, some type of juvenile justice involvement. Basically, as I say, the students that time left behind were the work individuals I was working with. And I began to see a pattern that if someone or some group of people had just interjected in these students' lives earlier in the pipeline, we may not have this reality. And we'll talk about realities in a little bit because that is a concept that I need people to understand, that what you do can change reality in our students' lives, which ultimately can impact you in the future if you put the effort in early. So eventually I started working in St. Louis juvenile justice system, working in the detention center. So when people talk about the school to prison pipeline, I worked in it. So I know what it's like every day to go to your job and the door is shut. And it's those big, heavy steel doors. It's clank, clank, clank. And that does something to you as an adult. Now you put it in perspective. If that does something to you as an adult, what do you think it does for kids who come through that door every single day? Or have to hear that door every day, knowing that they may not have the possibility to get out. So as I'm doing the job, I'm working the job, developing programs, to kind of get them back in the community. I heard about this term, I heard about the term school to prison pipeline. I started seeing the data, and I'm a huge data junkie. If anybody knows me, I love data because I can miscue data, but when I leave it all out, you can't lie with data once you put everything on the table. And I started to realize that a lot of decisions that were being made for these youth were based on things that could have been stopped earlier on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I made my decision to go back to graduate school, get my PhD. And I was like, I strictly said, I am focusing on school discipline. That's what I want to do. And it's interesting because most of my professors are like, the question is, what do you want to do when you get your PhD? And most people don't know. They get in and like, I kind of want to do this. I knew because I'd seen the detrimental effects of school discipline when it didn't go right. And we had students come into the juvenile justice system, and the likelihood of you going out or coming back in, which is the term recidivism, is higher. If we can keep you out, we have a greater chance. So I said, if you want to fix the pipeline, you don't fix the flood at the bottom, you got to go to the top of the pipe. So that's why I was like, let me get and put myself in a position so I can sit at certain tables to help make decisions that keep kids in school and also support the individuals that work with kids as well.
Okay, so you said something about clank, clank, and you did actually move your hand to the clank, clank. So you said it, imagine what it would do for the child or the youth. So tell us a little bit about it. How did it make you feel? Made you feel what, claustrophobic or sad or what? How did you feel?
Detention centers and prisons aren't built to rehabilitate individuals. We know that. The data shows it's not built for humans to go inside to, one, be in isolation. That's the first thing. Two, while we have these new laws and things like that that's supposed to provide people with supports and treat you as human, the system is built to dehumanize you. It's built to strip you down. It's not built. It's like how people say you do the crime, you do the time. Well, doing the time is sometimes worse than the crime itself, because for certain offenses, students don't need to be in this place that's not built to build you up, it's built to tear you down. So, I've seen individuals come in on suicide watch, medical issues. And where these are individuals who don't have any type of special needs, individuals coming in who need special needs, that was a whole nother slew of issues that they would have. It's not built to get people to go back into the community and actually be productive citizens. So for me, it's like every day you're walking in, the windows are small. So you're not dealing with like these large windows where you can see everything. You only can go outside so many hours of the day. If there's an incident, there's a lockdown to where nobody can leave. It's very penalizing. You can't decorate your room. It's not built to be what we kind of take for granted. It's not built to be home. And it's not built to say, hey, we're looking to improve and build upon you as individuals to be productive in our society. It's not set up for that. So a lot of times you will see individuals who will come into the system and they never leave because the system is not built to get you back out and ready to go. The system is designed to keep you in the system, regardless of who you are.
Right. And, I see True Prince all the way in Houston, when you talk about how they come in with these different offenses or things, he said profile in school just because how you wear your hair, what you do with your hair, simple offenses that could have been dealt with to keep them in school. What's your thought on that?
So I'll give you a prime example, and I've seen this in multiple states. So matter of fact, it was and the person who is in Houston now will know this. It's a smaller town named Hearn ISD, about an hour to hour and a half away from Houston. So I'm talking to somebody, say, yeah, we had this child, he came into school one day and he had his, we know that every kid nowadays wears a hoodie. It could be 150 degrees outside. Kids are wearing hoodies. That's just what they do.
Yes.
Not recognizing this is a cultural phenomenon that all kids are doing, black, white, purple, green. They see this kid, he's got his earphones on. So they're like, hey, can you take your hoodie off? So he's just like, mm-mm. So instead of asking a question, that's the simple thing. Hey, what's going on? How's your day today? It escalated. Student got riled up. He got mad. He got upset. He got suspended. And the suspension system where it works is you're not suspended out of school. They actually put you on an alternative education placement. So he ended up actually going to juvenile detention. Well, little did they know, because if they asked the question, they'd figure it out. He was having a bad day. Why? Because he's homeless. He's homeless. Like his mother has to go out. They actually sleep out in the car outside of a Walmart. And well, because homeless shelters aren't built to hold the whole family. Typically, mothers have to go, and the women have to go to one, and men have to go to another one. He's literally spending his nights, if not in the car outside of Walmart, he's actually in a men's shelter. And it's not a kid's shelter. This is a men's shelter. So you have a child who is, 15, 16, spending his nights at a men's shelter with grown adults. I think that would kind of make you kind of edgy in the morning. I think that would.
I think I would be a little edgy in the morning. And okay, Mary Stapleton said the first time I went to visit someone in jail, it was very sad, and it never got any easier, I guess, as you went there. I don't get it when people just go back and go back and go back. The recidivism, I think I pronounced that word right, okay? Of why they go back and back and back. And so I'm going to move now, and I'm going to pivot to your book that you have out that I had the opportunity to read, and I'm going to put it up here now. It's Reimagining School Discipline for the 21st Century Student, engaging students, practitioners, and community partners. John A. Williams III and Chance W. Lewis are the editors. So this book right here has a chapter in it, and you did the first chapter, and you kind of touched on it already, that you said humanize first, and you just talked about that, and discipline second. You and Shanique Lee, Aaron L. Harden, and yourself, you all contributed to this chapter. The chapter talks about unadultifying African-American students in K through 12. You've been talking about this, Dr. Williams, about humanizing first. So can you talk about that a little bit more, about what they can do? Why don't they humanize these people? Why do you think they do not? Because they don't care? They don't have time? They say that's your business? What's the story?
So it's interesting. So this chapter was put together, and the authors and we kind of had this conversation to kind of talk about not only our experiences, but our experience with students, and really understanding that everybody's going through something. We all have the fortunate but unfortunate experience that we've all lived through COVID-19. Like there's certain ramifications that, guess what, we have to live with. And there's a humanizing effect that we have to have. Now, mind you, this big book was written before COVID-19. Okay. Understanding that these kids, if the kid has a bad day, they are penalized by suspensions, which can last a lifetime. But if a teacher has somewhat of a bad day, we don't necessarily hear about it. We know they have a bad day. We hear about it, but it's like there's more of a consequence for a student. We don't allow our students to make legitimate mistakes. Let's be clear. We don't fully develop our frontal lobe or figure things out into our 20s. And some of us are still crazy in their 30s.
Come on, let's go 40, 50, 60.
40, 50 beyond. But we are quick to penalize them and saying, okay, I know you're human. This is a normal mistake. Okay, how do we adjust and reframe this to a point where we don't make this mistake at home? Also, you have to look at the fact, and particularly when it comes to Black and brown students, 80% of our teacher workforce are white females. Now, that's not to exclude the rest of the educators out there, because we got some that are great, Black and brown. We got some that's not so great. But you're dealing with, if I've never been around you in a community setting, how can I really instruct you? Because I don't know the community you come from. Vice versa. Like you can't assume because I'm a Black male that I can walk in there and start talking to Black males and they get along with me. One, there's an age difference. Also, there could be a cultural difference. Yeah. It's let me get to know you is, the old song, Getting to Know You. That's what needs to happen first, so that the respect is built there, the trust is built there. And then when it's time to discipline, it's less of, this person's just hammering me. It's more so, okay, I actually know this person cares about me. So thus, I'm going to make an effort to alter my behaviors. And a lot of this always been the issue when I say reimagine. We got to get out of the habit of thinking that school discipline has worked. It's never worked. We have the data that shows it's never worked. It didn't work before Brown versus Board of Education. It didn't work during integration. It didn't work in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. It's never worked. mainly because we don't try to humanize what we do. We see children as products, and because they're products, they can be used or they can be discarded. And when I say by humanizing first, it's like place the human first of what they need first. And I think it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes. Are their needs met? Not only in the home, which is questions you should ask, but also, are their needs being met in the classroom? And if they're not, they're going to disengage. If your content and what you're instructing is just not up to par, they're going to disengage. But let's just say you are doing what you, and speaking on teachers specifically, you're doing everything you need to do. Well, what supports do you have in your classroom? That's an administration issue. Like, what do we provide you as a teacher? And teachers do a phenomenal job and they give it their all. But guess what? They need supports. And they need more so than just the good old boy, good old girl pat on the back. What type of supports are we putting in the classroom to support teachers who may work with students who may need additional assistance because their behaviors don't directly align, even with the behaviors that are in the classroom? So that's where that chapter kind of come from, is like, let's start treating students as humans first, because honestly, you're working with someone's child. And I want to put this out there because people seem to have this misnomer that parents don't care. If a parent doesn't care about their child in school, they won't send their child to school. Keep that, like, people like to say that about parents, like, well, they don't care about education. Trust me, parents nowadays, if they don't want to send their kid to school, they won't. So they care enough, but they may not care in the same way that you think they should care, based on maybe their own experiences with education or with schooling and things of that nature. So we got to put the human back in, discipline, which is a bigger word of discipleship or following something. And it's like, how can we follow when we're not trying to keep the humanness inside of what discipline should be?
That's right. Okay, so KMS says, what is the role of an education in relation to the student? You kind of touched on it a little bit. It seems that we are conflating the role of the teacher with the role of a parent. Okay.
So that's a good question. And I'll go back historical because I'm a big historical buff. We got to understand when this ideal of education was conceptualized, teachers played the role of the parent.
Yes, they did.
They played the role of the parent for many students. It's the whole village effect. Even in the 50s and 60s, it was to point where women who became teachers, they could not have families.
Exactly.
So this emergence of these two worlds, they've always been there. It's always bled over. I mean, anybody's educator who knows in the classroom, you're going to be mom, dad, sister, brother, grandma, auntie, everything, because that's what it takes to fulfill that role for that child to get them where they need to go. Even if they have everybody in their family around and a bunch of cousins and stuff like that, you have to play those roles because honestly, they need to hear different voices coming to them. And sometimes the teacher is that voice. And mind you, this is not letting parents off the hook. Parents have to do their job. Parents are the first teacher, but there has to be if parents are the first teacher, teachers should be the other parent if they're great teachers.
That's right. That sounds right. Kat Rupert says, although behind, many programs are put in place to equip individuals in custody to be productive with a skill set and basic education to reiterate into the community. Now, just based on what she just said, and in your book, you have actual case studies, if you will, of people that have experienced some issues of dehumanizing a student. Now, you tell a story about you and Alex, and what was just up there made me think about that, because there's one part in here that you feel really bad for Alex, but it's one part that he begged to stay in school, but they wouldn't let him stay in school. The only alternative they had was to put him back into the place where you were working at a juvenile detention center. The recidivist, he came back, but he begged to stay in the classroom. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, don't take him out, because when you say you're suspended or whatever for 30 days, that's 30 days, I believe, of not learning nothing. Help me out here, okay? And so if you're not learning anything, you're going to be behind naturally, okay? So tell us a little about Alex and how he said to you, I believe, I asked them not to put me out, let me stay.
So interesting. I'll give people it's a paradox. So we have a deficit perspective when it comes to families, particularly Black and brown families. Everybody does. So no one's exempt from this. It's interesting because it's like, well, they come from broken homes and broken families, and they're being sent to school, but let's suspend them. So if you suspend them, where do you think they're going? They're going back to the broken homes and the broken families that you demean so much. And that cycle, that doesn't make sense. So when it came to Alex, I'll give you some other data. Students, 2017, 2018, United States, missed 11 million days of school. Let that sink in. I'll give you some more data. 2.7 million students were suspended 2017, 2018. 2.7. Let's be clear. If that was a city in the United States, that would be the third largest city in the United States.
Wow.
2.7. That's above Chicago, San Antonio, Charlotte. The only ones that don't exceed is New York and Los Angeles. 2.7. That's in-school suspensions. They haven't even given you the out of school. Wow. So when we talk about keeping kids in school, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way than just say we're gonna send you out. We don't know what to do with you. We're gonna send you out. When it came to Alex, it was an interesting story because he'd already lived what I would call a rough life. I mean, he was in the gangs, he was all that stuff. Brilliant kid though, brilliant kid. So his story was like he had a younger brother, and someone was picking on his younger brother. He told him, "Look, I need to stay in school." Because if I stay at school, I can protect my younger brother. If I'm not in school, if you all send me out, I can't protect him. And if I can't protect him, I'm going to do things that, guess what, aren't legal. So he ended up killing a kid who was bullying his brother.
He ended up what? What you said?
He ended up killing a kid because this kid was the kid that was bullying his brother every day. Every day his brother would walk to the school guard. He wouldn't mess with him if Alex was there. But when Alex wasn't there, he was bullying him. And he was like, I'm not going to allow this to happen. But when he told the teachers and the administrators, just keep me in school so I can ride the bus, so I can protect him, they didn't listen.
Wow.
And again, this is where it comes to us. You know, we have to take a time to say, okay, what's really going on? A lot of times we are just looking at symptoms. We're not looking at root causes. And when we look at symptoms, we'll miss or unaddress everything out of there. It's one of those things we have to take the time to support our students, but we also got to support our educators.
Yeah.
We can spend money on everything else, but we don't spend on education. And we see the results. We literally see the results in everything we do. And discipline is one of those things. There has to be better options than just removing kids for the simplest things. Dress code. Why am I missing school for 10 days? Because my shirt's not tucked in.
But listen, Dr. Williams, Reggie Duncan says, I am a Black male multi-time award-winning elementary school teacher. Congratulations. I represent 1 to 2% of the teacher population and work in all white space for 14 years. More often than not, the majority of my job is mentoring, advocating for, and connecting with students of color throughout the facility. It's the last sentence is right there. It's exhausting, and our students will only suffer if or when I leave. Okay. So hang in there, Reggie. Hang in there, Reggie. Don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere. But students do need help. Okay. Here's a follow-up question from KMS. A follow-up question to his statement about the educator and the student. How can we empower the teacher in relation to the needs of a student when at times it can contrast the education system?
Good question. Good question. It's a very good question. And I'm going to give you a simple answer. You need to vote. You need to vote. Here's the thing. I've heard it from all sides. And we live in a very precarious world right now when it comes to education. Education is the only system that has a school board that's usually filled with people who aren't educators.
Hello.
Would you like to have your surgeon and your surgeon board run by people who work at 7-Eleven or La Quinta Inn, folks who have no clue about surgery, but they run the hospital?
Did you say La Quinta Inn?
La Quinta Inn. Think about it. They're good at what they do in their field, but we abdicate the responsibilities because of who we like on what they look like. No, a school board should be ran by people who are in education because educators know best, period. If you shake up the pot, guess what? The best educators rise to the top, but what happens is we don't vote in our best interests when it comes to education. Because guess what? Right now, we got the big boogeyman of critical race theory going around. these teachers don't teach critical race theory. You don't learn that until like upper advanced level. And the average teacher has a bachelor's degree. They're not talking about this stuff. But in the end, guess what? Because we don't vote and put the right people in power, now we got teachers who are great teachers who are scared to talk about anything that's history related. Anything that's history related. Because we've given up the reins to people who really don't care about education. As Red said, they just want to make the coin. But we have to vote as a collective block to say, guess what? We need to put education as the front matter. Because not fix the education system, we need to reformat. Reformatting is different than fixing and rebooting. For reformat says we come up with a different format that's the best of everything that's put in there that we know is going to work, and we got the right people in there to work. If anything is off in the system won't work. And we all know when our electronics don't work, it could be one simple thing and everything's going wrong. And that's what we have to do. We have to vote. And there's no excuse of saying, well, I'm just going to leave it to the next person. Well, you can leave it to the next person. But please understand that there's a reality where this next person is not going to do right by your child. They're not going to give a care about your child, because often, and I need people to understand this, the people who sit in positions, their children don't go to the same school as you. They don't even sit in the same district as you. So they can make decisions about your children. And guess what? It doesn't matter to them, because their kids are not, their children won't see the repercussions of their decisions. We got to vote. We have to be very strategic. And we have to understand, if you don't, buildings will decay. But if we don't have the best teachers in there, we all will suffer.
Yeah. So True Prince said voting only helps when you have someone who really wants to help. But we end up getting lies. That's true. That's true. Kiera, put that one back up about True Prince when he said people hit people. I want to talk about that one. A long time ago when I was going to school, it wasn't that long time ago. Yes, it was. Okay. You were able to hit the students if they did something or not, but we are supposed to control the whole class when you look like, when they look at you like you're an adult. Okay. So let me touch on that, True Prince, about the hidden. Okay. And I wanted to bring that up. When I was going to school, it was okay for the teacher to take the pocket of a male student, hold the pocket, and paddle that person with a big rubber paddle. It was not a problem. That person was disciplined right then, and go sit down. That's what they did. Go sit down. As they say, go sit down somewhere. Okay. That's what they did then. That was school discipline. Okay. But nowadays you can't even touch a child, and the child is jumping on the kid, jumping on the teacher. What's your thoughts about teachers being afraid? You know, what's going on with that? I mean, I would be scared too. Okay.
So here's
kind of rough.
So here's my prerogative on that.
Dr. Williams, if you humanize them or not, they
so here's my hot take. I'm gonna give you a hot take, and this is a hot one. Because I often get that with Dr. Williams, you know, corporal punishment back in the day, it worked. It didn't work. It never worked. You learn through pain, but did you learn? I got played this. I was in private school. We got paddles. I know all about it. But did you learn? Because guess what? I can point to the same people. We all had those classmates who got hit real hard, and we know the ones who still clowning to this day.
To this day. The difference is this. The reason why we came up with suspensions because folks was like, well, we shouldn't be beating kids to death. So they said, hey, guess what? We're going to do out of school suspensions. There's legal cases for this. We're going to send the kids out. So who you think they started sending out first? They started sending out black and brown kids. We didn't have out of school suspensions until Brown versus Board of Education afterwards. Then they said, guess what? We kind of sending kids out for anything. You speak Spanish, we send you out of school. Special needs, we send it out of school. They sending them out for everything. So some parents pushed back and was like, wait a second, this is against civil rights. So then it was like, you know what? We're going to come up with a new phrase, a new twist. We call it in-school suspension. All these is because guess what? The system wasn't built in the first place to operate not right, but correct. Again, there are other countries that don't have this issue. They don't have this issue. And we can say, well, man, you know, back in my day, we was beating kids and kids is right. If we really look at it, if that's the case, then why we have so much trouble in the news? Why we have all this stuff going on? Because beatings worked, right? They definitely work.
That may work for some child, but that don't work for every kid. I'll tell you right now, you can beat me every day. I'm gonna do what I want to do. That's just who I am.
Oh
when
no,
you tell
Dr.
me,
Williams, I can't believe that. I can't believe that you would say something.
I'll be honest with you. Certain individuals, it's not the beating. Sometimes it's with the holding. Sometimes it's learning. And I believe this, the state, because teachers are public servants, schools are public servants.
Yes,
the state should not have. If you're okay with corporal punishment in schools, then what you're saying is you okay with corporal punishment for people in jail. That's what you're saying. You're okay with because that's the line of thinking. We are not primitive. We got to do something better. And yes, it's some rowdy kids out there. Trust me. And that's what I tell most of my teachers that I work with very explicitly. You got some rowdy kids out there. I get it. They rowdy. Certain things need to be done, and we need to isolate that. Do different schedules. Don't have all the rowdy kids in one classroom. I said, but let's keep in mind, these are still kids. Some of these some big kids. I said, but I worked in a detention center. Trust me, I'm hanging out with murderers half the day. I don't have the ability to just put them down when I want to. I can't call the police for simple excursions. We had to deal with it. And some of that is more so on we just don't have a system that wants to deal with our kids. Whether you beat them, you don't beat them, you send them out. We have to understand that the system is crippled and is broken. And until we get the right policies, the right practices, and the right people in the education system, you're going to keep getting the same results and expecting the different results by doing the same thing over and over. We all know that is the definition of insanity.
That's right. Dr. Reggie Duncan, I'm liking on you. You know, you come back next week and get all these good questions here. Loving it. Dr. Williams, what do you anticipate will happen in education in the next 5 years as it pertains to students and teachers of color? If we continue to see the mass exodus of highly qualified, highly educated, experienced educators. Wow. Reggie, that's a good question. Go for it, Dr. Williams.
So one or two things are going to happen. And I see it already with the data. What's going to happen when teachers of color leave it is that students of color are not going to want to go into education. If we don't want to go into education, we won't, you know how we say representation matters and stuff like that. Well, why should I go and I ain't see nobody who's done it already? Okay. Why? I mean, a prime example is a lot of data that I pull, and I'm actually doing a study right now of women teachers of colors and black male teachers of colors, and black male teachers and black women teachers. And the number one thing they say everybody got in common is that I got into education because I knew somebody who was a teacher. My mama was a teacher. My grandmother, it was somebody that got you hooked in.
Right.
What happens when that disappears? And we saw it that the Brown versus Board of Education is the mass exodus. So then what happens is you don't have the people who are maybe best equipped culturally to work with these students. And then it becomes more burdensome for the black teachers, particularly black males that are there. The black males are called on to do all the discipline stuff. Black women are called on to be the hitman per se. And it's like, wait a second. You got this kid for more times of the day than me. Why don't you deal with it? It's going to put more stress on them, what causes them to leave. And to me, part of the answer of fixing this issue is that we do need more teachers of color. But to get more teachers of color, you need to pay them more. You need to support them more. You need to provide them with opportunities to get certified while keeping a job, because we pay them nickels and dimes versus other industries that are public service industries that are getting paid. Teachers don't get paid hazard pay. What do you mean? Every other position that's a public servant that deals with this type of situation gets hazard pay. They don't get mental health days out. Things that should be mandatory. But again, this level and effort to support our teachers, it can't just be championed by teachers. It's got to be championed by the rest of us. So anywhere I go, I'm like, how much do y'all pay teachers? Are you supporting your teacher? Are you providing supplies to your teachers? Are you checking in on your teachers? Because we got to support them just like they got to support our students. But if we don't support them, how do we expect them to support our students? They won't.
Yeah, that's a good thought. True Prince said, if you notice, Caucasian schools shows prosperity and black schools ends up closing. What's your thoughts on that, Dr. Williams?
So that's mixed. And I'm going to tell you why it's mixed. Because people talk about the black schools closing up, but that's just the media tell you about the black schools that's closing up. They don't tell you about the high performing black schools out there. They don't tell you about the high performing black schools at 100% graduation rate and all their students are going to high quality colleges or vocational schools or the military. They don't tell you about that. So a lot of things when it comes to education, whatever you see, investigate. If I tell you the sky is blue, I need you to go outside and question it. Say, is it really blue? Is it the color that you say it is? Because you have white schools out there closing. Let's be clear. I know rural areas that are just rural white areas that are so bad that even high rich white folks won't even send their students out there. There are schools that are predominantly black that are being closed down. That is a fact, particularly in urban areas. But there's also rural areas that are getting through it the same. So we got to look at our own, but we also got to look at the fact that there are some high performing black, urban, rural schools that nobody talks about. That is doing well. And we got to look at, okay, so if they're doing well, what did they do? How do we replicate their best practices? I may not be able to take everything, but what can I take and move to my school or my district? Or even, I think one better, as parents, how do I take what's working in a classroom and apply it in my household? Because again, I'm the first teacher. So we got to get out of this binary of they doing well, we doing well, doing bad. Nah, it's some black schools that's doing phenomenal. You just don't hear about it.
That's right. Now let's talk about KMS says to Dr. Williams' point of what countries don't have the same issues we have in the United States. 1, what countries? 2, what tactics can we utilize from those countries?
So I'll give you a good one, Finland. Now, y'all, I know most people will say, well, Finland is all white folks. You're right, but it's poor white folks over there too.
Okay.
The first thing Finland did, now mind you, they started this in the 70s, so we about 50 years ago. The first thing they said is we got to better educate our teachers. So every teacher who comes in Finland has a master's degree by the time they get out. It's the most competitive job to get in Finland is to teach. They also raised the pay. Finland people, I think, make like $80,000 off tops.
Wow.
As soon as you hit the classroom, and then they have continual support. When they in Finland was one of the poorest educated countries in the 70s. By the time No Child Left Behind, and we all know No Child Left Behind because that's 2000. By the time the 2000s hit, they had still remained the smartest country in the world, in the galaxy, because we don't know of any other countries in the galaxy right now.
Okay.
They invested in their teachers. They invested in them. So if the gains they trickle downhill to the students. So now everyone's trying to do the Finland model because they're like, wait a second, you're scoring internationally higher than anybody else. And all you did was say, guess what? We're going to invest more in teachers and provide them with support. You would think this is an Einstein idea. It's very simple. But that's just one of the countries. There's other countries out there that's like that are doing well. But again, we can't just take somebody's word for it. We, as in not just Dr. Williams, because guess what? I take off the doctor hat. These are things I knew before I became doctor because I went out there and saw and said, who's getting it correct? Not who's getting it right. We need to find who's getting it correct. So that way we can replicate this stuff.
Right. James Swanigan, hello there, nephew. The media typically doesn't show Black America in the best light, as most of us are aware of. So I agree. I agree. Question all the stats. Go find out what's really going on. That's really good right there. Okay, Dr. Williams. Well, you have mentioned most of the time your persuasion has been boys. Let's talk about the girls and the push out. Let's talk about what's going on with that. So we all know that once you push people out, black, white, whoever, kids just getting out of the street. We also know that it affects other things like it's higher pregnancy rate, it's higher crime, it's a whole bunch of things that goes and correlates with putting kids actually out. Now with the girls, talk about a little bit about the push out factor or whatever. I just made that up, but I know it's a movie called Push Out. Go for it.
So the interesting thing about Black girls is that the phenomenon of Black girls being pushed out, things of that nature, it's legit. It's a setup for something that's small, dress code, they disrespectful. These are, cultural things that, if you know Black girls and Black girl magic, it is what it is. It's who they are. And you can't say that that's a negative. But when they're cast in negative light, we call it double minoritized. So not only are you Black, but you're Black and you a woman, which we know in our society, which is patriarchal, you're on the low totem pole on the scale. When you compare Black girls to, typically we compare Black boys to white boys. Latinx boys to white boys. We also compare black girls to white girls. When you look at black girls to white girls, black girls are 4 times more likely to be suspended, expelled, referred to law enforcement than white girls. This is particularly because we don't have a system that values them as humans. One, because of their racialized identity, but also because they're girls. Mm-hmm. And we're quick to typecast them. Same thing with the boys. And I always say this when it comes to research because people get in a tizzy. Well, why are we paying attention to the black boys and not the black girls? And why are we paying attention to the black girls, not the black boys? Wait a second. I got 2 eyes. I can cross my eyes. I can look at both of these things at the same time because the root of the issues are very similar. So if I don't fix the issue that's going on with black girls, guess what? I'm not going to fix the issue that's going on with black boys. If I'm not fix the issue with black boys, I'm not going to fix the issue with black girls. So when we look at black girls, and I'll say this particular, I got 2 daughters. I take the black girl stuff seriously because there's times that they've been in situations that I know a white girl would not be treated like that. I know a black boy wouldn't be treated like that. And I have to deal with it. It says, once I isolate everything else, well, this is because you're a black girl. And this educators don't know how to work with you. So I have to come in as an advocate and advocate you. Now, mind you, at the same time, my children know I am very strict. I have very high expectations. But the thing is, and this is what we have to understand, high expectations without high support doesn't mean anything. Nothing. If you are not supporting people and supporting children, it's not going to matter. You can have the greatest expectations in the world, but if you aren't supporting them to be able to bounce back from mistakes, and they're not afraid to make legitimate mistakes. And like, honestly, I just made a mistake. They will always live in this cycle of, well, I'm never good enough. And then they disengage. And when they disengage, it's not like I got to suspend you from being in school. You're just not going to come back to school anymore because you're like, school's not for me because of the push out.
That's right. That is a push out. And then, I think they talk about it sometimes. I know they have a documentary that you probably can get on YouTube or whatever about the push out and how they're pushing out. Miss Mary Stapleton Carr from Mississippi said more black girls are finishing school and college each year. Boys stay in school because they want to play sports. Okay. So black girls are finishing high school and things like that. But the ones that they are pushing out, and I'm going with Dr. Williams on it, they need to humanize them first before they start to discipline them. Just like he talked about that one guy with the hoodie. He's been living homeless. It's about trying to humanize first, meaning treat them. And I think you said in your book about operationalizing empathy. Okay. So that's what we're talking about empathy. I'm not sure if teachers have empathy as much as they should have for these students. What's your thoughts, Dr. Williams?
So I think the greatest teachers have empathy. Okay. They have it. But that's something that we don't market as what is it? We don't market as educators. Like overall, like that's the one thing that everybody gets from us. We are the empathetic folks. We can have empathy, and I see what True Priest says without handouts. Guess what? Some days folks need handouts. You tell me you go to wherever you go at, and then one day they give you that. Like we all been to Sam's or Costco's, and when they give you that free sample, that kind of makes you feel good. It does. Yeah. Oh man, I got something free.
Especially if you're hungry.
Especially if you're hungry. And that's what we're dealing with sometimes. Sometimes we're dealing with kids who are mentally hungry, who are spiritually hungry, who are physically hungry. And sometimes they need that one handout to fire things up, to get the furnace burning. We have to engage in it. You look at the data right now when it comes to black girls. Black women are the most educated group in the United States. Mm-hmm. The most out of everybody. They right. Blowing it out the water. Kudos to them. But that don't mean we let up. That don't mean we stop. We ain't reached the mountaintop. Okay, how do we keep pushing more to go up there to be in those positions? Same thing with black boys. So the empathy part is saying, guess what? I may not have been in your shoes. I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. But I'm going to make sure you get everything you need to get where you go. And that's something that the best educators do it because they're sitting with 20 to 30 kids in their classroom. They can't figure out everybody's shoes. But how do they get them to the point where these students believe in education and lock in to be able to understand the content and then use the content, not just in the classroom, but in their lives in that year and beyond?
Okay. So Dr. Williams, this has been really, really thought provoking, and we appreciate you being here. And I do want to show the people exactly. If you want to purchase that book, you can go to johnnawilliams3.com. There's an icon there. Just click on it, and you can get that book. Go to Twitter, JW3PhD. He is always on Twitter. And here again is the book right there. So you just go to johnnawilliams3.com. and you can get that book. And it's just not a book for just anybody. This book also, I believe, when I went there, it was about, it could possibly be a textbook. In fact, in some places they're renting this book. Okay, so it's something that we need really to explore, you know, some of the ways. And also, lastly, I want to talk about that you wrote in here. It is counterproductive for a teacher, counselor, or community police officer to enter these student spaces as an outsider and then try to dictate the terms of conditions on how African American students should behave in the community. So they don't know exactly what's going on in their community, but yet they're trying to dictate it. Tell me a little bit about what you meant when you said that.
So I always liken it to like, it's your house. And, you know, everybody's house has different rules. You know, some people say, hey, don't, you know, when you come in, take your shoes off. So for those people who have good carpet, you know, back in the day, they're like, you know, don't step on my carpet. Or for some of us, you know, they had the plastic on their furniture. Don't sit on that furniture. That's the good furniture.
That's the good furniture. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you feel if somebody walked in your house and said, no, take the plastic off. I want to sit on the good leather. You'd lose your mind. How are you coming to my house and you're telling me the rules that I've established? Because one, you've established those rules for a particular reason. There's a reason why you kept the plastic on. And hopefully it's not to burn people in summertime because that stuff gets hot.
And
but you have a rule behind it. But if someone's coming to your house, they're changing the rules and they don't even know why the rules were there in the first place. We often have many people coming into communities, in all types of communities, not just Black folks communities, brown folks communities, white folks communities, trying to tell people how to do things, and they haven't sat in a community. They don't know what the pulse is like. I always say the hoodie thing because people think it's a phenomenon. Man, these kids are wearing hoodies. Have you hung out with children? We are going through an epidemic of heat right now. Kids still got hoodies on. That's what they do. It's not a sign of disrespect. Like, get off. It's like the old thing. Get off my lawn. What if it's not your lawn? You can't say it's your lawn if you don't live in the community. You need to know what's going on. And it's incumbent as we go in these schools. You need to be a part of the community. You need to know what's going on in these kids' lives because that's going to impact how the school operates and functions. And if you don't know, you can't make rules in places where you're an outsider.
Okay. So they say, yes, teachers do. And when they have a student who needs something, they reach out to the community, mentoring programs. And they do. Miss Mary from Mississippi, they do. But we need more and more. We need sustainable mentoring programs. Okay. A lot of them are, financed, if you will, by grants and things of that nature. When the grant is gone, then they don't really have any type of sustainability plan. So we need to get more and more, and it needs to be definitely something that is worthwhile being in the community. You know, the evaluation needs to be done. Is it really working in the community, or is this something that you got grant money for and you're something that you're doing? So yeah, they do have programs out there. KMS says not to be a conspiracy therapist, okay? But if the solution is as simple as investing in teachers, do you think there is a deeper reason as to why our education system is stagnated?
That's a good question. I'll give you the deeper reason. The deeper reason why education is stagnated, because it comes back to the idea that I got mine, you go get yours. It comes back to, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. This whole idea of meritocracy, that if you work hard, you're going to get where you need to go. Some of us know we've been busting our butts for years and ain't moved nowhere. And then we can see somebody come in one day and they just fly up to the top. We got to get it out of this idea. And I talk about in the book, we got to de-silo things. Yeah. You know, it's simple to invest in teachers. It's very simple. But who does the investing in teachers? Well, the people who make the rules at the state board, how much teachers are going to get paid. Mm-hmm. I work in teacher preparation. You know, we have tons of guidelines, but these guidelines don't change until the public sentiment changes. And again, People come to estimation, well, you just should just go to school. For what? The whole idea of schooling has never fully benefited everybody. We have to understand public education was built in the 1800s off of slaves who were freedmen. That's how we came up with the idea of Sunday school. Folks weren't dropping out of Sunday school. We didn't have that. The notion was built on we need the village to move forward. That has not materialized into our typical public education system, which again, the foundation comes from freed enslaved African Americans who built their own school system in the South. The school system was so hot, people from the North said, wait a second, we got to see what's going on because they getting gained. But at the same time, there was a notion of, well, why should we invest in their kids? They not my kids. Mm-hmm. We do it now. Well, why should I pay taxes over here? And what if I told you the taxes you pay today is going to help get the kid who needs to become a doctor, who ultimately becomes the solution to your heart problem that you maybe have because you've been having too much salt in your system for the last several years?
Okay,
think of it like that. Think future term. Yes, think of how many kids who have been suspended who in the future they can deal with global warming. They can deal with this gas stuff that we got going on. They could come up with these solutions, but we don't think like that as a society. And that's what it comes with the humanizing, the fact that if I invest in you now, the long-term dividends could ultimately pay you fast forward us as a society. But we always thinking about me, and we always trying to keep things in our little huddle. And if it don't affect our little huddle, or we don't know how it affects you, we're not concerned about it.
Right. Jennifer Watson says, I agree, knowing rules, mentors are needed. There is no sustainability plan, more mentoring to invest in our youth and families. You're right, Ms. Watson. Hello there. I hope you're doing well. Okay, so you know that I always say at close to the end that I have food for thought. Okay, so in this book, and I love this book. The part that I've read. Now, this book not only has humanized first and disciplined second. I think they handpicked, and help me out, Dr. Williams. I think you handpicked the people to be in this experience. You have racialized experiences for Latinx students. You have something in here about the LGBTQ plus youth. You got disrupting disproportionate discipline through teacher identity discourse. So it's many different things in this book. And you really do need to go to this website and purchase this book and read this book and use it. Use it for as a practitioner, as a community or educator. You just use it because it really gives you some really good food for thought. Okay, and on that note, let's go for so this book also has recommendations, and I'll give one first. Food for thought that you need to ask yourself. Is my decision to discipline a student based on their action or inaction? Or is my decision based on the need to affirm my own misgivings about African-American students? That's the first food for thought. The second food for thought is, how are my experiences inside and outside the classroom impacting my dispositions towards African-American children? And this is all building, I believe, on empathy as well. And the third one is, how will my decision or indecision to reprimand an African-American student, and Dr. Williams touched on this, impact their life immediately or 5 to 10 years in the future? Those are the foods for thought. Now, Dr. Williams, it has been really a good time listening to you. You're thoughtful, you're smart. You're handsome as well. Okay, I usually don't tell my guests that they're handsome, but I have to give a disclosure at this time for everybody that don't know. This is one of my number one sons, and I am totally proud of my son. And so to have him on here, to see the fruit of my labor, son, I appreciate you greatly for coming on today. And I appreciate everybody for taking a part in this. And remember, if you want to contact him, here's the website right here. And you can also email him at weconsultant30@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Williams. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. And also next week, this is what we're going to have. The week after next, Monday, August the 15th, we're going to have an evening with Angel Cornelius of Mason 276, a beauty products entrepreneur. She has been on the Today Show. She's been in the Oprah magazine. So come back in 2 weeks and let's talk about her and her entrepreneurial journey that she started, I think, at 57. And now she's a $1 billion or $1 million person. So it's never too late. So I thank you so much for joining us today. And you've been listening to Girl Who Don't You Know. It's my talk show, my bucket list. And please go to YouTube and subscribe. Capital M is Maryland _pink. The letter N in green. I appreciate you guys so much. Until next time, have a great, super prosperous rest of the week. Thank you so much.